operate that way. I figured let's just go live. We'll figure it out. All right. Sine, are we live? Sine, I'm not sure if you're trying to answer, but you are on mute.
One more second, please.
Certainly.
Yes.
Okay. Operate that way. I figured let's just go live. We'll figure it out. All right. Sine, are we live?
Yes, let me all right.
Sine, I'm
yes.
not sure if you're trying to answer, but you are on mute.
Yes, yes.
One more second, please. Certainly. Okay.
All right. All right.
So that is that time delay. So we must be live. That is the time delay that I think we experienced in our last board meeting as well.
Yes.
So Sine, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have you quickly call the roll, if you will, and then I'm going to ask you to mute so that we don't hear the background noise of us being on YouTube live.
Okay, I am ready. Okay. Chairwoman Pandey.
Present.
Mr. Ibayami is absent. Mr. Thomas. Mr. Thomas is absent. Dr. Goldberg.
Present.
Okay. You have 2 present and 2 absent. You do not have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. So I just want to welcome anybody who might be joining us on YouTube Live. We just learned we do not have a quorum for tonight's Finance Committee meeting, and therefore we will be taking no formal action, but we will use this time to informally hear the contracts that will be presented to the full board at the next full board meeting. Dr. Goldberg, I want to thank you for being here. Mr. Stevens, I want to thank you for being here from the board. We can certainly ask questions as we normally would under a Finance Committee meeting, but again, we will not be able to vote. We will follow the agenda as presented, and we will eliminate the items, again, that require a vote. So things like calling the meeting to order, approving tonight's agenda, approval of the minutes that are all simply action items, we will not even hear. The next series of items, items 4 through 13, which are report on contracts, are listed as informational as well as action items. So here again, we will not be able to take action on those items. However, we will hear the information on those contracts, and the board members that are present can continue to ask questions as we normally would. We will then again hear all of these contracts fully presented in front of the board at the next board meeting. Any questions by the board members before we go ahead and informally hear these contracts? All right, hearing no questions from the board, why don't we just jump right in? And if somebody is here to present on the Sodexo contract, again, this is for informational purposes only. My understanding is this is a renewal, and Mr. DePina, thank you for being here. I see you here with us tonight. I will kick this over to you.
Thank you. I also have Lino Cambio on the call, so I'm actually going to turn it over to Lino to talk us through this. This is a really a quick one. As you mentioned, it is a renewal of the existing agreement with Sodexo.
Great. Mr. Cambio, welcome.
Thank you. Good evening, Ms. Pandy. What we have here is a 1-year contract for food services for all Providence Public Schools, as well as 15 non-Providence Public Schools for the 2021-22 school year. It's a 1-year contract with 2 additional renewal options for the management of the food service program. This is part of a 5-year contract that was an RFP, of which an RFP was issued in March of 2019. As you know, Sodexo was the sole bidder. The selection committee evaluated the proposal and gave it an above satisfactory scoring. Again, after this year, we will have 2 additional available options to us to renew.
Thank you, Mr. Cambio. So just to reiterate, so this is year 3 of a 3-year contract with 2 renewable year options, correct?
It's correct. It's year 3. Each year is handled individually, so it's actually they're all 1-year contracts. So this is the second renewal option that we're exercising.
Got it. Okay. Thank you for that clarification. Okay. And the sum total is 17.4 million. Okay.
That's correct. And that is the total expense for the program. It will be funded by reimbursements that we get from the USDA, and which will exceed that amount by 1.2 million, because that's the guaranteed return that was negotiated with Sodexo for the program.
Great, thank you. Questions by board members on the Sodexo contract, which is our food service contract, and it is one of our larger service contracts.
Can you just clarify what the performance guarantee is?
Mm-hmm. Mr. Cambio?
Sure. Yes. The performance guarantee is in regular terms, it's a profit that the program will generate on an annual basis. So regardless of, how things go for the school year, barring, a pandemic or something of that nature, Sodexo guarantees to return a surplus of 1.2 million back to the school district to go into our Company 60 Enterprise Fund, to make investments in other purchases that would improve the overall food service program.
So Dr. Goldberg, that fund is what goes into replacement of equipment. There's a very specified methodology in which those dollars are spent, and it essentially has to go to the improvement of anything that is school food related or capital improvements to kitchens, etc.
Thank you.
Other questions by board members? Mr. Stevens, I know that you're on the call, and this is probably the first time that you're seeing the Sodexo contract.
Yes, it is.
Okay. Any questions before we move on to the next contract?
No, thank you. No, thank you, madam.
Okay, fantastic. So again, RFP, Sodexo was the sole bidder. This will be year 2 of a contract with additional renewable year options. All right, thank you, Mr. Cambio. Again, because we do not have quorum, we will not be voting. We will not be taking any actions on the contracts that are presented. Madam Clerk, if you want to go to the next contract, please.
Thank you.
The next contract is the Jacobs Engineering contract. This is a project manager contract. I see Jamie Audette on here. Mr. DePina, is that who we're going to pass this to?
That's correct.
Okay. Ms. Audette, please go right ahead. Welcome.
Thank you. This contract, as you mentioned, is for the owner's project manager. Jacobs Engineering was the only vendor to respond with pricing to the 4 vendors that we contacted for the pricing. The owner's project manager is going to assist in planning, pricing, and implementing several projects throughout the district, going through our capital revolving fund, as well as the incoming federal COVID funds that we are expecting. The way we had to bid it out, we did it under the state MPA 430, which requires a bid for each project. So we actually split it between 3 bids, one for elementary schools, one for middle schools, and one for high schools. But we are going to do the one contract to include everything. So we did a not to exceed cost of $750,000. This would be a 1-year contract with a 1-year option to extend.
Ms. Panday, if I could, this is a requirement of the Rhode Island School Building Authority that we have an owner's program manager, in order to qualify for reimbursement of up to 91%.
Thank you, Mr. DePina.
And these fees are actually reimbursable through that.
That was my understanding. I guess my question is, I'm a little confused about the start and end date of the contract. It says May 2021. And so I'm not sure what are the effective dates of this contract. That was unclear to me. So if somebody could explain that, and Dr. Goldberg, also if you had any questions, or Mr. Stevens, but that was one that stood out. I'm familiar about what the requirements are, but I'm again confused by the start and end dates of the contract.
Because of the timing, we wanted to start the contract or engage the vendor as soon as we received school board approval, which would have been May 19th, 2021. I filled out the sheet that you have in front of you, and I failed to put an end date. So I apologize for that. So it would be 1 calendar year from the implementation of the contract. We can make a revision on that before next Wednesday.
Yeah, that's a little misleading.
Sure.
So I wanted to make sure. And so essentially what this would be is a contract with a begin date effective May 20th, 2021, and an end date of May 19th, 2022. Is that what you're looking at, Mr. DePina?
Correct.
Okay, understood.
We'll
And
make the adjustment.
okay, and then I also, if we can just, under the staff analysis portion of this, it says that it's the work slated to begin in the summer, which I know then how critical it is to be able to get this contract implemented if we're talking about summer capital improvement projects. But then I also saw the requirement of any projects in excess of 1.5 million that have been designated to OPM. So does RIDE determine which projects have to be overseen by our OPM? Is that what happens? And it's what is that in excess of 1.5 million?
So RIDE actually looks at the work being done at a school as a whole. So it wouldn't be, for example, we may go in and replace a boiler in June.
Okay.
But then we may also do painting or something in July. So they will look at the full scope happening at that school and base the amount off of the full scope happening. So they define the projects a little bit differently.
Okay, so that's what I wanted to get clarification on. So the 1.5 million, so let's just, Ms. Audette, continue using that boiler scenario. And if we're replacing, let's say, 20 boilers in 20 different schools, it may not meet that 1.5 million threshold because you're counting it per individual school, not necessarily per the capital improvement project as a whole of replacing boilers. Is that my understanding of it?
Yes.
Okay, so if we were to contract with a vendor and their total work for the district on any capital improvement expenses is in excess of that 1.5 million, but the projects, the individual projects may be, again, let's just use easy numbers for me, $100,000 each boiler, 15 schools, you got your 1.5 million. So because the single project is less than 1.5, an OPM would not be required to oversee that.
For that particular one, yes.
Okay, all right, that's what I was unclear about.
Yeah.
Thank you.
But also RIDE, as part of their review, the way they were explaining it to me, they look at all sources of funding. So not to give another example, but try not to confuse the situation with, for example, if Brown comes in and does a renovation as a donation, RIDE actually takes that into account as part of the project work being done in the school. So the 1.5 million isn't necessarily just what the district on our own is doing. It takes into account like city work and any donations and the work we're doing.
In total cost. And so if you look at that formula that way, would pretty much the OPM be seeing most school projects? Because based on the school improvement plan that we have, a super majority of the capital expenses are in excess of that 1.5 million. And so and I just want to make sure I know this. So the OPM will, with the costing structure that they have specified, that $750,000, regardless of the volume of work, it'll incorporate all of that. And it looks like it's, between, again, elementary, middle, and high school. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. All right.
Ms. Panday, if I could, please understand that there is already an owner's program manager working on the capital plan that the city of Providence has hired. That's Downs
Yes.
Construction. We are
Correct.
required to have our own PPSD because we're looking to do our own set of projects separate from the capital plan. I just want to make that distinction, that these are
So,
projects that aren't covered by the larger capital plan. We're using district funds. I think we've described it before. The capital revolving fund are funds that PPSD has identified that can be used and recycled several times through that reimbursement process to do a significant number of projects. So what Riot is saying is that if you're doing larger scale projects, which would fit typically under a capital plan, larger capital plan, you need to have your own OPM. And that's what this satisfies.
got it. Thank you for that clarification, because
Sure.
I think that's where I'm getting confused.
Right.
Is this doesn't seem like a large enough scope of work based on the capital improvement plan that we have with the bond money, right? And so Mr. DePina, are we assuring that there are clear deliverables in scope of work? So if we have two OPMs overseeing different projects or different work streams within one school, you and I have been around long enough where we get a lot of this, right? How do we avoid this? And how do we make sure that there are absolutely clear scopes of work and deliverables where there's accountability to the different OPMs?
But again, I mean, that's our job to provide that oversight, working in conjunction with the city. We work very closely with Downs Construction already, where we're directing a lot of that work on behalf of the schools. Again, we're looking at this OPM through Jacobs as a piece of the puzzle to allow us to complete work in schools. So let's pose another example. Let's say the larger capital plan replaces a roof on a building. However, there's been years of damage caused inside the building that needs to be remediated. So the larger capital plan would pay for the roof replacement, and then we would use capital revolving funds as an example of a project that we would do to remediate the damage that had been done by the years of a leaky roof. So that's how we see it fitting together. They work to get in conjunction, not competing with each other, but complementing each other.
Okay.
And we're directing that traffic flow.
Well, yes, agreed. I just also want to make sure that there are super tight controls in terms of documentation of work and responsibility, because for us, accountability is going to be key with the significant investments that we're making from a capital improvement perspective. And I just want to make sure, and we've seen that even of late, right, where there were some repairs made, there's been some challenges with, was this an existing challenge or was it a problem of new construction? And I know that typically construction companies have very good lawyers on their side, and they're going to try to figure out ways to, I don't want to say skirt responsibility, but I just want to make sure that our OPMs are also part of that equation when it comes to that accountability.
Just for context, Jacobs Engineering Group, if you're familiar with the Jacobs report, which was produced in 2017.
No, I know. Yeah.
It's the same company. So they've
No,
got
I know the name.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they're also someone who the school building authority is very comfortable with as well. There's such familiarity with them in terms of their work. They also, another arm of Jacobs is actually being retained by the SBA to assist them and to provide extra capacity on their end in terms of evaluating projects. Now, obviously, they won't be evaluating the projects that we submit through Jacobs. They won't be evaluating themselves. So, but that would be something that we work out with the SBA in terms of who's evaluating the Jacobs prepared projects. But we totally understand your concerns and the concerns of the board in terms of making sure that the lines of accountability are there, and obviously the deliverables. That there's a significant, like a very detailed process we have to follow through the school building authority. Because again, to be eligible for that 91% reimbursement, we have to follow everything to the letter. And that is why they mandate, and they'll pay for it, they're mandating that OPM be in place.
Well, and technically the OPM should be working for us, right? And so they should be helping us hold whomever the contractors are for the capital improvements. But again, I want to make sure that there's clear delineations between the OPMs as well.
Correct. And they are truly our vendor. We met with one of the representatives actually a few hours ago.
Right. And because they work for us, we should make sure that there's enough communication between the two of them as well, and want to make sure that we're properly, again, documenting. This is where documentation becomes our best friend, right?
Mhm.
Okay. I'm sorry that I've monopolized the conversation. These contracts excite me because it means that there is the potential for great work to be happening in the district from a capital improvement side. But Dr. Goldberg, Mr. Stevens, any questions from you?
Not so much a question as a comment. I just want to say that the public and definitely parents and communities are really interested in this work that we're doing to improve buildings, improve building health. And I found this process a little challenging to follow. So the more that we can communicate out that these efforts are being made, especially because it's wonderful to see that we're going to do work on HVAC systems and do HVAC upgrades, I think the better.
Absolutely. And Ms. Goldberg, you know, we can always use our committee structure. Dr. Goldberg, I apologize for, you know, we can use our committee structure for reviewing stuff like this as well. And so if you want to have the OPMs, you know, provide a detailed list to Mr. DePina and his team who's overseeing this stuff, we can certainly get roll-ups, you know, quarterly or however you see fit. That's not uncommon for us, especially when we get into this process of undertaking a lot of the capital improvement expenses, and we've gone through quite a bit there. So know that this can be a forum to be able to review that.
Great. Yes, I think quarterly updates sound wonderful and be happy to take this offline as well.
Okay, great.
And I'm sorry, also just so you're aware, we have a monthly school building committee meeting where we go over the capital improvement plans. It's open to the public. You're more than welcome if you want to join a meeting, hear what's going on. We get into a bit more detail about the capital work that's happening, but just so you're aware that that's an option as well.
Yeah, and Ms. Audette, what time does that meeting usually take place?
Generally, it is the fourth Tuesday of the month at 5:30.
Okay. All right. And if you wouldn't mind sharing that with the members of this committee, and if we are available, certainly we can try to do that, but at least at a minimum, get the word out there to the public that that is a standing meeting and the public is welcome to join.
Okay.
Great. Thank you. Other questions by board members?
Yeah, absolutely. And I absolutely stand in agreement with Dr. Goldberg ended up saying, and what you said as well, because I get excited when I'm starting to hear about as it pertains to like the projects that's going to be going on within the schools, building up our infrastructure, which a lot of families and a lot of community members get upset about because they say that our schools are falling apart. So to see that this plan is getting put in place to review this contract and to see actually that something's going to be put in place to ensure that our infrastructure is where it needs to be, 100% got my agreement. So absolutely excited.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Stevens. All right. Again, if you're just joining us to the committee meeting, we will not be taking action on any of these items as we do not have quorum. And the information that we're hearing tonight is for informational purposes only. The next contract for review is Generation Teach. And let's see here. I have my contracts pulled up as well. Generation Teach is JL Lopes. Ms. Lopes, welcome.
Good evening. The administration would like to present the Generation Teach contract as a partner for Summer Learning 2021. The scope of work is for Generation Teach to provide a high quality program for 6 weeks to 300 rising 6th through 8th grade students in Providence at no cost to families. The program focus will be on math acceleration, also reading and log classes to design and develop reading and writing skills. I have the executive director here of Generation Teach that can also help answer any questions that you all may have. This particular contract went out, an RFP was released in March, and we had 10 bidders, and 8 out of the 10 vendors met the minimum threshold of our scoring rubric. And I'm presenting Generation Teach because it's over our $200,000 threshold. This is a performance-based contract. As you can see, every summer we have 80% of the total amount that goes to the partner, and 20% is based on the performance that we agreed with the partner, and they are laid out here. So making sure that attendance is a priority. Any questions?
So I will open the floor to questions by board members. I am familiar with Generation Teach. They've been one of our summer learning providers for several years now and tend to be one of our higher quality, well-attended summer programs. But questions by Dr. Goldberg or Mr. Stevens?
Is this an in-person program?
Yes, this year it will be in person. Last year they did a virtual programming.
That's great to hear.
Mhm.
I would just ask, do we normally have a high volume of students that join this program?
Actually, this is one of our highest attended programs. And we usually, GT usually has a long list of students who want to enroll in the program.
Yeah,
All
there
right,
generally
thank you.
is a waiting list, and they do a really great job for recruitment. It's going to be interesting to see the recruitment efforts this year, and I think having it be in person will be more exciting, and I would anticipate that this would fill up quickly.
I would agree with that.
Okay. Other questions by board members? Okay, again, we will not be voting on this contract tonight as we do not have quorum, so we will go to the next contract, which is Catapult Learning.
Thank you.
Thank you. And for Catapult Learning, Mr. Stockwell, I saw that you were here. Are you here to report on this contract?
Yes, I am.
Fantastic. Welcome to the meeting.
Great. Thank you so much. Good evening, everybody. Before you is a proposal for a contract with Catapult Learning. This would be a contract renewal. Catapult Learning provides supplemental education services to our non-public schools. We've contracted with them for the past 2 years for similar dollar amounts. And so our district is recommending a contract for what would be option year 2. And again, just for context, these are funds, a part of our federal funding that we receive through Titles 1, 2, and 4. A proportion of that is obligated to support Providence resident students enrolled in non-public schools. And so that is the funding source for this contract.
And Mr. Stockwell, we essentially act as a pass-through for these non-publics. And so we are not part of necessarily the decision-making on the services that they want, but do try to ensure the quality standards, again, that they're meeting the quality standards. Okay.
Correct.
Questions by board members, and again, these are for our non-publics. The title dollars come through Providence. We're the LEA and responsible for supporting our students, even those that attend non-public schools. All right, if there are no questions on this contract, again, we will not be voting. You'll hear me say that quite a bit tonight, just to make sure that everybody is clear that we do not have a quorum. And we will move on to the next contract, which is the Gothic Arch Greenhouses. And for this, I saw Ms. Tuttleby was here. Welcome. Always nice to have our principals with us.
Good to see you again, Ms. Pandey. Thank you. So the 360 High School is the proud recipient of an XQ acceleration grant for a total amount and hopefully a starter amount of $125,000. And it's focused on helping us become a maker-focused school and really to improve our school-wide literacy practices. And one facet of making is being led by a student and teacher-led team, which we call the Green Making Committee. And their focus is to transform the internal space of our building as well as the external campus to be more eco-friendly, including a long-term goal of growing food for the community. And so students have researched and are designing a space outside that includes a greenhouse. And this contract is solely for the materials for us to construct that greenhouse ourselves.
Very exciting. Thank you, Ms. Tuttleby. And congratulations on all the XQ work that you're doing. I'm hearing great things.
Thank you.
Questions by board members?
Yes. Happy to see you, Carrie Tuttleby. Happy to see you. I would just ask you
Carrie.
Thank you. I would just ask, where are you planning to locate the greenhouse?
So you know how we have the two V-shaped courtyards here? It's on the Rugby Street side. And whereas the in-ground garden that JSEC started a number of years ago is still on the other side. And so we're actually talking to the Gormleys and JSEC about how we can bring all of this, together, including potentially long-term summer jobs for students to keep the garden and the greenhouse going in the summer that are paid jobs. And we've been coordinating with JL and Lopes and Joe DePina on some of the facilities, as well as those connections to like work-based learning together. And they've been great thought partners and supporters of this.
Absolutely great.
Ms. Tuttleby, I know that you have a pre-engineering pathway as part of 360. And then I saw in here something referencing environmental sciences. Is that another career pathway that's recognized, or is that something that you're trying to build through this grant?
Right, something we're trying to build long-term. As a small school, it's hard to always have all of the electives or core sciences that would lead to the pathway endorsement, but certainly one of our goals long-term. And so we've had environmental sciences here for a number of years. And it's one of our most popular classes.
I remember that it is, and that's why I wasn't sure if it was going to actually become a full-fledged career pathway recognized and whatnot. It's more just the courses, the environmental science courses.
Yeah, but it's certainly something that we're thinking about long-term.
Okay, because then having these experiential learning opportunities will just enrich that learning experience overall. So I wasn't sure if you were moving in that direction, and it's an interesting time with environmental sciences, with renewable energies, and this greenhouse project could be a great exploratory space for students to learn about that, right, and grow. So I would encourage you to look at that as an opportunity. And I think as we continue to hear more and more about some of the investments that are going to be made, whether it's through, what the Biden administration is contemplating through the jobs plan, so much of this is going to focus around those renewable energies. Environmental sciences are going to continue to be a growing need in terms of talent. And so would love to see that happen for your school, just because I do know that it is one that is more popular.
I'm so glad that you brought that up, and we'll definitely heed that advice. That gives us even a little kick to speed it up.
Certainly, and happy to connect with you offline. And kind of my day job is trying to help create those experiential learning opportunities for high school students year round. So if there's a way that
we
I
would
can
love
support,
that.
Yep, happy to be a support offline on that.
Thank you.
All right, our kids deserve the best when it comes to work-based learning opportunities. For me, I know I was always that student who did much better learning by doing as opposed to being taught to. And I know so many of our kids in the district feel the same way.
Without a doubt. And our new branding tagline is going to be make more, be more.
That's fantastic. Very good. I'm excited to see this come together.
Thank you.
All right. Other questions by board members? All right. Again, Ms. Tuttleby, I know you've heard me say this a few times. We will not be voting on this contract, but it will be heard at the board where we will take a recommendation for passage there.
Can I just ask a clarifying question?
You may.
For that, at the school board meeting next week, should I be present to answer questions, or is that just about tonight?
It never hurts. I can't imagine that this will get significant pushback. I'm assuming that this will pass pretty quickly. I will also say this, I think it's always nice to have principals here defending their work. I know I appreciate when principals show up, but if you have other things, other pressing engagements or a conflict, it's not required for you to be there. We'll represent what you've told us in this meeting.
Thank you. Well, I'm also wondering if I could bring a student or two as well who's been leading this work.
We would love to hear students. Absolutely. That actually will make the meeting more fun.
Okay.
It's one of the things that I miss about being in person is all the great work that we get to hear from the students. So I'm going to say yes, and I would almost assure that Dr. Goldberg and Mr. Stevens would feel the same way.
Absolutely.
Okay, so
Great.
I would love that. And if Ms. Tuttleby, if that is going to happen, if you could let the members of the district know so that this way we can plan, and we'll actually allow for time for that to happen. And I'll let Mr. Heeman, our board president, know that that's the plan.
Okay, thank you.
All right, thank you so much. All right, So again, we will go to the next contract, which I believe is it Naviance? And
Yes.
who do we have presenting? I'm sorry, I'm just opening up my contract as we are looking at this as well.
Sure. Hi, it's Gina Sylvia. Good evening,
Hi.
everyone.
How are you, Miss Sylvia? Nice to see you.
Thanks. Nice to see you. So I'm the Director of School Counseling on the Secondary Network. Last year was our first full year of implementation. I'm sorry, this year was our first full year with Naviance. Last year, we had a soft pilot that they did not charge us for from March to June. So we rolled this out to students slowly with one task per grade level. So this is a RIDE requirement for all districts to have an individual learning plan for all middle school students. This is our college and career and life platform that helps middle school and high school students set their goals, discover their strengths, explore college and career interest, and plan for post-secondary life. So some of the things that we have worked on this year in the middle schools, like I said, a goal setting, exploring their interest, exploring careers. There was an 8th grade CTE survey that helped us with placement for the students who were going into a pathway for high school. And for high school, of course, goal setting and the whole college and career piece with resume building, transcripts transferred to colleges. We piloted 5 high schools, and next year will be all of our high schools will be using that feature. And also posting scholarships where students can apply for scholarships through this platform. So last year, the contract is $157,330 per year. And we're asking if we could renew this for the next 2 years. It was an option for years 2 and 3 last year. We renewed it for the 1, but we're requesting if we could renew this for 2 years instead of having to renew for next year.
Got it. Before I open up questions to the board, Mr. Patisi, I just want to make sure from a contracting perspective, do we have the ability to pass as a full board the recommendation on a 2-year contract, or does it have to be heard every year? Do you know?
Sorry, I was on mute. I believe that you do have the ability, but I mean, I will double check with Sergio and Charlie and council that you do have that authority.
Okay.
And if we have to knock it down to 1 year, then we will for the full board.
All right. That was just a point of clarification because I know that we can enter into a contract, but everything is contingent upon funding, and we usually do renewable year after year. And I'm not saying that we wouldn't entertain that. I just want to make sure that we have that point of clarification at the board meeting.
Got it. Understood.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Patisi. Questions by board members? All right, hearing no questions, again, Ms. Sylvia, we will not be voting tonight because we do not have a quorum, but you can anticipate this being in front of the full board at our next meeting.
Very good. Thanks so much.
All right, thank you so much. It was great to see you.
You too.
Our next contract is, I believe, the Microsoft contract, which I believe Mr. Santos, I don't know if I saw Mr. Santos in the...
I'm going to be presenting on this one. Peter can't make it tonight. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you, Ms. Hannon?
I'm doing well. How are you?
Good, thanks.
Yep, I'm going to talk about both of the next two. So we'll start with this EES, which is the Enrollment for Education renewal. It is a $252,000 contract. This is essentially your Microsoft Office suite. So you're looking at Outlook, Word, PowerPoint. We received 3 bids through the state master price agreement, 227. Dell is the lowest bidder. And so we are recommending for approval. Now, happy to take any questions.
Okay. Questions by the board? All right. I think it's pretty self-explanatory. And again, we will not be voting tonight, but you can expect this to be heard at the full board meeting next week because we don't have a quorum. All right. Great. And Ms. Hannon, the next one is, I believe, the HPE.
Yes. This is also an annual renewal. This is a sole source award to Hewlett Packard. They are the only vendor that can provide hardware support and software support to our virtual service infrastructure. The total contracted amount is $9,163.56 from June 2021 to June 2022.
Great, thank you. Questions by the board members? All right, hearing no questions, again, we will not be voting, but it will be reviewed at the full board meeting next week. And then the next contract that we'll be listening to is, we have two Mcgraw-Hill contracts. The first one is for math. And Ms. Bradford, I think you were here to speak on these, correct?
Yes, I am.
Fantastic. Good evening and welcome.
All right, good evening. So we are continuing our adoption of high quality curricular resources. Last year, as you'll remember, we adopted the ARC and Eureka curriculum K-5 and ARC and illustrative math 6 through 8. And so we did go out for an RFP. We had a collaborative group meet, and we are recommending to adopt the McGraw-Hill mathematics curriculum resource for our high school math programs, the curriculum, as well as professional learning. And this contract would be good beginning this year, July 1 of 2021 through June 30th of 2022. And then we would love to probably have extensions on this contract. They're just a very reputable vendor. They are green, rated, and do meet all of the high quality curriculum rubrics and just our expectations around curriculum. So you can see by campus what each school will be receiving for each different content area, as well as the number of professional development days.
Great, thank you. Questions by board members? Okay, hearing no questions, I will let you present the next contract, which I believe is for English, correct?
Correct, and this math contract is $257,000. And then looking at the ELA curriculum, similar to the mathematics curriculum, we did select the McGraw-Hill. The resources, the Savas, we actually have both print and digital resources for both of these products. So students will receive the books, the teachers will receive the print books, as well as a full online suite and resource through Study Sync here. You'll see it listed where they come with both the curriculum, the assessment, as well as the professional development. And it's for all the math courses 9th through 12th grade at each of our high schools. This contract also will begin July 1st of this year through June 30th of next year. I'm really preparing our students to do well on the SAT, as well as the college English courses that they would be taking after high school. We have all the texts for students as well, so any of the readers that they would need for the courses, and this will be our core ELA resource for our high school students. And the total for this, with the licenses, the print materials, as well as the professional development, is a little over $610,000.
Great, thank you. Questions by the board?
Dr. Bradford, just a question about the print resources. We had the opportunity to talk to one of the elementary principals this last week, and one of the things they said is that the print resources often come out of the school-based budget, and they don't have a choice on whether they want to purchase the books versus just make copies. And for instance, they'd like part of that budget to go towards something else. Does the individual school have the opportunity to decide if they want all of these resources or they prefer not to? Or is that something that we just say universally, you need to purchase these things?
So when we adopt the curriculum new, we purchase kind of like our tier 1 core resource for every campus, every student, every teacher. So year 1 of our curriculum implementation, we purchase everything centrally. I will say that in year 2 and year 3, if schools want to add any additional resources or supplement from this vendor, then they're able to, make adjustments for their campus. But we do kind of provide the standard across the board, just because we know we have mobility and students may move from 1 or 2 campuses throughout the year, or just kind of that standard, as we also support centrally with coaching or professional learning. we really want it to be, based on that same high quality resource.
And so Dr. Goldberg, you'll see here on the source of funds, we're back up to the top of this contract. It says that the source of funds are district-based and not school-based. And so if you're hearing differently from schools, I think that that's an important conversation to continue to have, whether that's with Dr. Bradford or others in the district, because it seems like there might be some confusion as to who's initially responsible for those initial costs.
And I think we may be purchasing it slightly different this year. Chris Patisi, I don't know if last year was similar with the ARC adoption when we purchased that new curriculum.
Yeah, correct. So this is.
It was, yeah.
Yeah, so this is kind of the same basis of as how we implemented ARC, that the district will be providing the funds for this, and they will not be counted at this against the school-based budgets.
At the local, yeah, at the school local level. Mm-hmm. Yeah, but again, Dr. Goldberg, if you're hearing differently, that's important to know, because that was a point of clarification. I remember Mr. Patisi and Mr. Scott, if you'll remember, even last year when we were going through all the ARC stuff, that was something that was critical as well, in ensuring that it was a district bought curriculum for implementation. And again, for that continuity, it's so important.
In this particular case, it had to do with your Eureka books, and the principal thought that they had more control of their school-based budget than they actually did when it came down to it, because they were required to purchase, I think it was like $35 per book for each student. So I know that it's one of our priorities to allow the principals to have more school-based management and to make more decisions over their own budget. So that just surprised me when I heard that.
I will circle back to that, but I think they definitely have a lot of autonomy. I will say with curriculum, there is, I think, our standard core, and that, we're trying to have it very much aligned across all campuses, all grade levels, is like our kind of quality standard of the resource. I think before last year, schools were able to decide on the curriculum that they wanted to purchase. So we really have standardized that. I think that moving forward on all of our new curriculum adoptions, we want to purchase them centrally and then allow campuses, in year 2 or year 3 of that adoption to be able to supplement with those resources as needed. But I can just circle back and provide any clarification. I know they're going through their budget meetings right now, or in that budget cycle. So we can just circle back and see if there's any, pain points for principals and how we can support.
Wonderful. Thank you so much.
Yeah, and I just think kind of as a theory, I'm sorry, go right ahead.
I was just going to say, I wanted to introduce Daniel Garrity, who's our mathematics supervisor. And so he really helps lead the math curriculum review process in that RFP team. And so he will actually be the person that probably follows up on that math curriculum budget question that you had.
That's great. Thank you. And I think just kind of as a point of one of our actions is we wanted to get some aligned instruction across our schools, right? We had aligned curriculums back in when I joined the board in 2008, 2009, we were moving towards aligned instruction and had made significant investments, and then moved away from that to give schools more autonomy. And I think that is where, when we decentralized a lot of that decision making, which I believe in decentralization on many items, schools across the board were not equally vetting curriculum, if you will. And so, as we know, we have a very transient population. And so it was not like a child could pick up from one school, move to the next, and expect the same level of instruction. And so we're actually going back to all of the policies that we rewrote in 2008, 2009, 10 for having aligned instruction. And I, for one, am excited to see this come back. I was a big supporter of aligned instruction, particularly in the urban core. That's so important because we do have such a transient population. And Dr. Goldberg, so just so that you know, it's also why I was big on the district should be paying for this. Like, if this is our theory of action, then we should be fitting the bill for it.
That makes sense.
Yeah. All right, additional questions? All right, here again, I sound like a broken record. We will not be voting on this contract tonight because we do not have a quorum, but I do want to thank all of the PPSD staff to be here with us tonight and providing that information. It will definitely speed the process along. Please do anticipate all of these contracts appearing on the full board agenda, which will be next week. And that is where the board will be able to take action. Because we do not have a quorum, I will not even officially close the meeting. We did not open the meeting. Again, tonight was just purely for informational purposes, and our conversation and votes will actually take place at the full board meeting. So with that, I want to thank you all and thanks for sharing the information. Should any board members continue to have questions, I encourage you to have them offline. The district has always made themselves available when I've needed them to do a deeper dive on a contract or a budget item, and I really encourage you all to do the same. All right, thank you all. Have a great night. Take care. Bye.
Good night. Thank you.
Good night.